Ich darf jetzt ganz
Okay,
herzlich begrüßen
so I would
den
like to
Norbert Böhmer.
welcome Norbert
Norbert Böhmer
Böhmer.
ist
Norbert
ökologisch
Böhmer
wirtschaftender
is
Mutterkuhhalter im
ecological,
Blankenfels in der fränkischen Schweiz.
economic
Und
sucking cow keeper
Norbert, du wirst
in
jetzt
Frankfurt
erstmal
in
deinen Betrieb
Switzerland,
kurz
and you
vorstellen und dann
will
werden wir interviewartig
introduce your
versuchen, gemeinsam
operation
zu
first of all, and
ergründen,
then in
wie du
an
zu dem
interview
Thema
we will
Herdenschutz
try
kamst und
to
wie du
find out
den
how you
bei
got to the
dir
subject
umsetzt. Also
of
erstmal alles herzlich willkommen,
livestock
Norbert.
protection and how you
Und
implement
ich
it. So
bitte
first of
dich
all, thank you very
um
much,
eine kurze
Norbert,
Vorstellung deines
and
Betriebes.
please would you just
Ja, hallo, Herr
introduce
Herle,
your
hallo an
company?
alle Teilnehmer.
Yes,
Ich möchte mich mal
hello
ganz kurz vorstellen, Herr
everybody. I
Steuermann,
would
Herren,
like
dass
to
ich mich kurz
introduce
vorstelle.
myself. So thank you
Wie schon
for
gesagt, ich komme aus
presenting
Blankenfeld,
myself.
Landkreis
Basically, I'm from
Bayreuth. Das
Fladenfeld,
ist bei
Bayreuth,
uns im Oberfranken in der
which is
fränkischen
in Upper
Schweiz.
Franconia,
Mein Betrieb, ich habe einen
Franconia.
Mutterkuhbetrieb mit
I
45
have sucking
Mutterkühen.
cow operation with
Gesamtmehrzahl haben wir in der
45
Regel 120
cows.
Tiere.
In total, we have
Aufgeteilt in zwei Rassen.
120 animals.
Die
They are
Hauptrasse
subdivided
ist
into
bei
two
uns
races. The
das
first
Fleckvieh, die Simmentaler,
one is
als Mutterlinie
the
und dann
Fleckvieh
wieder auch
Simmental,
eingekreuzt zur
and
Fleischverbesserung mit
also for meat
Aberdeen
improvement,
Angus.
we have
Die Zweitrasse haben Sie schon im ersten Bild
crossbred
gesehen.
it
Das
with
sind die
Aberdeen Angus.
Zwergzebus. Die
So
Zwergzebus, die werden bei
then we
uns
also have
eingesetzt
two
in
uh,
Landschaftspflege. Die Fläche, wo wir hier sehen, das sind
Zebus,
8 Hektar Landschaftspflege. Und da wurden die Rinder
and
verziehen. Wir haben ein
well,
Weideprojekt gemacht und das
these
hat bis jetzt
we
sehr
wanted
gut
to do a
funktioniert.
grazing project, and it was
Ja,
on a
vermarkten tun
trial
wir
basis, but it worked
unsere
quite
Rinder,
well.
unser
So we
Rindfleisch, das wir
market our
erzeugen, alles selbst.
beef
Das heißt, wir haben einen kleinen
ourselves.
Hofladen, gehen ein bisschen an die Gastronomie und
We
meist aber
sell
für
it, for
Endverbraucher,
example,
was wir
to the
so vermarkten.
catering
Von der
in
Flächenausstattung her
industry.
haben wir 80 Hektar reines
As we
Grünland,
have
das ist
80
Schwarzwäldacker,
hectares of pure
Biogrünlandbetrieb.
grassland,
Von den 80
we
Hektar
don't
sind
have
35 Hektar Zaun
field at all.
und es
Then
gibt eine
35
Zaunlänge,
hectares
das
are in
sind
the fence,
14
and the
Kilometer.
length of the fence is
Dieser
14
Zaun wurde in
kilometers. This
2018
fence was actually
umgebaut zu den
converted in
Wolfsschutzzäunen.
2018
Mit
to
den
become a wolf
Grünhütten.
protection fence
Ja, das ist einmal so der grobe
with
Umriss
the
zu
strands,
meinem Betrieb.
and that much
Und
about my farm.
Genau, jetzt ist die Frage,
Well, the
das
question
haben
now
wir vorher nicht geklärt,
arises.
Norbert.
We haven't
Ich als
clarified that beforehand,
Biolandpraktiker habe ich jetzt
but
einfach
as
zu
a
dich hergenommen und habe dich
bioland
geduzt. Ich hoffe, das passt so,
practitioner,
oder?
I
das
just said,
passt freilich.
Okay,
you
wunderbar.
know,
Dann
like
bleiben wir dabei.
a
Dankeschön.
I do to you,
Wie
which
kamst du
is doesn't really
zum
translate into
Herdenschutz? Also
English. But
weshalb
anyway,
hast du dich
so
überhaupt mit diesem
what got
Thema
you
beschäftigen
interested
müssen? Ich denk mal, es
in
war nicht ganz
livestock
freiwillig, oder?
protection? I think
Nein, das
that
war
it was
überhaupt
not
nicht
voluntary
freiwillig. Wir hatten
that you got into
2009
livestock protection.
einen
No, it
Kälberriss.
wasn't voluntary. In
Da haben wir überhaupt
2009,
nicht
we had the
wussten,
killing of one calf,
welches Tier dieses Kalb getötet hat. Sind wir
and
immer noch im Dunkeln rumgestochert.
we
Und erst
really
dann,
didn't
so ein halbes
know
Jahr später, hat sich
which
herausgestellt,
animal
dass
killed
der
it.
im
Half a year
Feldensteiner Forst,
later,
der Luftlinie, so 35
we
Kilometer
found
von
out
uns weg ist,
that in the
dass da
forest,
Wölfe sind
Feldensteiner
und
forest,
wahrscheinlich, dass es Wölfe waren.
there are
Und in
wolves, and most
darauffolgenden
probably
Jahren hatten
wolf
wir öfter
was
Probleme mit
the
Füchsen und
carnivore.
Kälbern.
And
Bis
in coming years, I
2016,
had several
2017 mussten wir
problems
dann
with
sehen, wie
killed
ein
calves in
Jungrind
2016.
schwer verletzt
We
war. Wir
then
mussten dann auch der
saw that a
Weidenote gehen.
young
Und
kind of
letzterweile als ich dann gesagt habe, so kann es nicht mehr weitergehen, ich muss was
ox
unternehmen,
was
waren auch schon
injured, and
vorher
then
über Jahre eigentlich
I
schon die
realized
Gespräche
that
mit der
something had to be done.
Landwirtanstalt
I had been
für
talking to
Umwelt und
the
haben wir auch
environmental
bestens beraten,
offices
auch mit
beforehand. I
Expertisen
received
in
superb
verschiedenen Ländern, haben
advice,
uns
and also
Rechtsprojekte
we talked to
angeschaut, wie das
experts
gehen
from
kann.
various
Und
countries.
2016 hat es
And in
einen Entschluss gefasst, so
2016,
jetzt muss ich was machen und haben dann mit Hunden angefangen.
we decided that we had to do something.
Was
So I
war,
started with dogs.
was war die Überlegung? Also weshalb,
Well, what
weshalb
was
hast du
behind
mit Hunden
it?
angefangen und
Why did you
weshalb
start
nicht
with
zuerst
dogs?
andere Maßnahmen,
Why didn't you
Zäune zum
prioritize
Beispiel?
Ja,
other measures
ich habe sehr
first,
viele
such as
Projekte
fences?
angeschaut. Wir waren in der Schweiz, wir waren
Well,
in
look, many
Brandenburg, wir waren
projects
in
went to
Österreich,
Switzerland,
wir waren
Brandenburg,
in Spanien.
Austria,
Und es hat
Spain
sich
as
bei
well.
mir klipp und klar herausgestellt, mit Zaun alleine
And it
wird es
was
nicht klappen.
clear
Ein
that a
Zaun ist
fence alone will
für
not
mein
help.
Dafürhalten höchstens ein 20-30%iger Schutz.
It
Wer sich mit
protects
Wolf
at a
ein
rate of
bisschen
20 to
befasst, der weiß, dass auch
30%,
Wölfe springen können. Nicht jeder
and
springt, aber es gibt immer
wolves
wieder
can
springende Wölfe,
actually
die auch über 1,20
jump.
Meter Zaun
and some wolves will clear a 1 meter 20 fence. The projects that I looked at abroad were partly with dogs and partly without dogs, but the ones that fared best were the ones with the dogs. So that led me
Und waren
to
da in
decide
deiner
that I wanted to
Familie
do
oder
it with
bei all
dogs as well.
denjenigen, die auf dem Betrieb
Yes,
mitarbeiten,
and in your
war
family,
das sofort,
well,
gab's da sofort ein Okay
did they
oder
say okay
lief das
straight
ab?
away, or how did
Ja,
that
meine Frau,
happen?
die war von vornherein mit im Boot.
Well, my wife was
Die war
on
immer
board
informiert
straight
von jedem
away.
Schritt, wo wir
I
eigentlich
kept
geplant
her
haben.
updated about
Frau,
everything that
sie hat immer gleich
I
gesagt,
planned
jawohl,
with the
also ohne
dogs, and
Hunde
she
wird's nicht funktionieren.
also always
Und
said
man
that
diese
yes, it
erreicht,
will
dass
not
meine
work without a
Murphherde
dog.
durch diese Wolfsaktivitäten
So
so unruhig waren, dass ich mit meiner Herde eigentlich nicht
also
mehr arbeiten konnte. Und wir mussten einen Schritt
I
machen,
couldn't
wenn
work
wir
with
uns
my
jemand
herd
anders
because the
hat.
animals were very
Der
excited
Schritt war
because of the
dann
presence of the
funktionieren
wolves.
und ich
So, you know,
Wie hat sich
all of
denn
this led
das
to the
Verhalten
decision in
der
favor of the
Rinder
wolves,
geändert, dass
of
du
the
sagst,
dogs, I
das
say.
ging so nicht mehr?
So you said
Ja, wir
that
hatten
the behavior
in
of
unserem Jahr
the
immer mehrere
oxen
Angriffe auf den Herden.
really
Es
kind
ist so
of
gegangen,
changed.
dass
So how
wir
did
sogar
it
mal einen ganz schlimmen
change?
Angriff hatten auf der Herde nachts einmal um 2 Uhr.
Well, the
In der Herde
cattle,
waren ziemlich
well,
viele
in
neugeborene Kälber drin.
the herd, there were
Und die Tiere
many
waren so
newborn
nervös und sind
calves,
so auf
and
der
the
Herde
animals were
hinterhergerannt, dass sie die
so
halben Kälber ertreten haben. Die wurden alle
nervous
dann totgetreten eigentlich von den Kälbern.
that they did a
Und du
stampede,
konntest die
and the
nächsten 2, 3
calves
Tage nicht
were
mehr in die
killed
Herde
by a
ran, weil der
stampede. You
Deckbulle, der
couldn't
hat uns
even
einfach
go
angegriffen, alles
into
was die Herde
the herd
quasi ein bisschen genährt hat, hat er
because
angegriffen.
Mhm.
Im
anything
konnten wir
that
nicht mehr arbeiten. Wir mussten ja auch
kind of
logieren im Winter im Stall rein.
approached the
Zum Teil
herd
mussten
was
gewisse
attacked.
veterinärische Maßnahmen gemacht werden, auch
In
Blutnehmen.
the
Der Tierarzt, wenn
stable,
gekommen ist
there
zum
had to be
Blutnehmen,
certain
dann war er
veterinary
eigentlich fix und
measures.
fertig, mehr wie ich, weil er schon Angst gehabt hat, dass die Tiere
Basically,
dem
the
noch was
vet
machen können,
was
weil die sind da, was die wachsen
actually
gegangen, so nervös waren.
very, very depressed as well because of the situation
Und
as it presented
wie hat denn
itself.
eigentlich dann das Umfeld
Well,
von
and the
euch
environment, your
darauf reagiert,
environment,
dass
how
ihr
did they
Hunde
respond
einsetzt, also
to
Wanderer,
you using dogs? I'm
Kundinnen
talking
und
here about
Kunden,
hikers, about
Nachbarn,
customers, I'm
wie
talking
wird
about
das sozusagen
neighbors.
angenommen
How
beziehungsweise
is
respektiert?
this
Ja, wir
accepted?
haben die Nachbarschaft und das Umfeld sehr
Well,
früh mit eingebunden,
we
haben
told the
auch in der
neighbors at a
Ortschaft
very early stage.
Infoveranstaltungen gehalten
We
zu den
also
Herdenständen,
made
was wir vorhaben
information
mit Hunden,
events
haben dann auch mal einen
in
größeren Herdenschutztag dann hier
the
hochgehalten,
village.
wo wir sehr viele
We
Leute
also
eingeladen
had
haben, auch vom
livestock
Tourismusverband waren
protection
Leute
days.
mit
We
da, vom
invited lots of
Großlandführeramt,
people from the tourism
und auch
association
mit
came and
unseren
listened to it
Landratsamt
all,
haben ja vorher schon
and
gesprochen, was
also
wir da vorhaben. Und da war
the
eigentlich schon das ganze
kind of
Umfeld so
district
informiert gehabt, was
government.
wir da vorhaben und dass
Basically, I
das eigentlich
told
auch bei
everybody
uns
about I
reibungslos
planned
funktioniert.
to do
Ich muss
in
auch
order to
sagen,
make
ich
sure
bin
that it
sehr
would
weit von der
run
nächstgrößeren Ortschaft weg
smoothly. I'm
und
very far
das
away
ist für
from
mich
the
jetzt
nearest
nicht ganz so störend.
big village, and that also means that the barking of the dogs
Hier sieht man
doesn't
nochmal
annoy people so much.
eine Herde, was ist es für eine Rasse?
Well, what
Wir haben
is
die
the
Pyrenäen-Medaillhunde.
race? Well, we have Kunin mountain dogs.
Wir haben hier noch
We have
ein
Pyrenee
kleines
mountain
Video
dogs.
zum
Yes, we have a small video to illustrate
Du hast die
your
Tiere
operation.
im Stall.
Die
So you
Tiere sind
actually
im
have
Winter
the
im
dogs
Stall
in the stable. Yes, in the winter
und
they go
als
to the
Freilaufen
stable.
mussten den Stall natürlich auch ein wenig umbauen, sodass die
Of course, you have
Hunde
to convert it a
keine
little bit
Barrieren im Stall hätten.
so
Das
that the
war immer auch
dogs
das
don't have
Problem, die Hunde
barriers in
quasi
the
in die
stable.
Herde
This was the problem,
einzuführen.
you know, like
Durch
to
das, dass
introduce
die Tiere
the
einen
dogs
Wolfskontakt
to
hatten, hat
the
natürlich auch
cattle,
das Tier Angst vor dem Hund.
since
Und
they
er konnte
had
vorher nicht
had
unterscheiden,
previous
ist das jetzt
contact
ein
with
Wolf oder ist das ein Hund?
wolves. They
Und
were
das war
also
dann schon ein
afraid of
bisschen
the
ein
dogs because
langwieriger
they couldn't
Prozess,
tell the difference between the dog
die
and the wolf.
Hunde
So this
so
was a
einzuführen,
long-term
dass die
process to
Kühe die Hunde
introduce
akzeptieren.
the
Wir mussten uns
dogs
auch von
so that the
vielen
cattle
Kühen
accepted
trennen,
the dogs.
da die einfach so
Also
nervös
some
waren. Die
cows,
Kühe hätten uns die
well,
Hunde
they
auf alle Fälle
really wouldn't
zusammengetötet.
accept the dogs, so we
Wie
sort
hast,
of
wie
had to
hast du
sell
das
them
dann
off.
jetzt unabhängig davon, dass du dich von
But
einigen
apart
Tieren
from the
trennen musstest?
fact
Also
that
wie
you
hast du
had to
die
say goodbye to
Hund
some of
und Rinder
the
aneinander
your
gewöhnt?
cattle,
Wie
how
lief
did
das
you
im
how
Detail
was
ab?
the habituation
Ja, wir haben
process
eigentlich einen
between
Fehler
the
gemacht.
cattle and the
Der
dogs?
größte Fehler war schon mal,
Well, we
wir
made
haben
one
uns am
mistake.
Anfang
The
zwei
biggest one
Welpen gekauft,
was that we
weil ich
bought
eigentlich der Meinung war,
2
die
puppies in
Welpen,
the
das muss nicht so
beginning
leicht
because we thought that the
integrieren in eine Herde
puppies
und sind
are
am leichtesten
easiest
zu
integrated into the
führen und
herd.
funktioniert.
it would have worked, but the cow wasn't accepted by the dog. And if the cow doesn't accept the dog, then it does not, then it will, for example, attack it. So it didn't work. And then we bought 2 older dogs. And then we separated part of the stable where the dogs were inside, and they had visual contact with the cows, or between the cows and the dogs. And then we put in also calves into an intermediate kind of area. After 6 weeks, we received a dog trainer, and they did a lot of work, and ultimately we then released the dogs on the pasture. In the beginning, it was a bit spectacular because the dogs wanted to attack, or the cows wanted to attack the dogs, but the dogs were clever, and they positioned themselves in a place where the cows did accept them. So for how long did it take? It worked for 3 to 4 days before it worked eventually, but the whole process until the cows were fully accepted by the dogs were accepted by the cows. The full process for the dogs to be accepted by the cows took about 2 years. Yes, because the cow has to accept the dog. They have to understand the dog is there to protect them. And especially if the calving period comes, basically it's 365 days, but if you have a cow that is afraid of a dog, and if she calves, then the fear increases. And there were cases when the dog flew through the air 10 meters because it was taken up on the horn by the cow. So, what things did you have to do with the authorities for you to even start with the dogs? Well, I said that I had to go to the district office. I was in the lucky situation that they really didn't understand my information. So basically, they gave me the benefit of the doubt, and that was quite lucky for me. And the fences, well, they were done provisionally for the dogs, and there was an extra strand put in. These, well, yeah, in the beginning we put an extra strand in the existing fences because the new ones only came recently. So your stable, is that protected again as well against wolf attacks, so the dogs can't get out, or what? In the stable I have one flock with the small calves. They can always go out to the pasture. So next to the stable there's an 8-hectare meadow. It's always open for dog and cow. And in the winter, all the dogs are also in the stable, and in the summer it's subdivided. Some kind of one flock might be taken to one pasture, one where I've had problems with 1-year-old animals, but they are now protected by 3 dogs. We also have animals from the food table, and they can't then go to the road and the next village. Well, it's surrounded by fence, so the dogs can go out again. And I had to make it so that the dogs can go through, but that was also a problem because that also meant that the calves could go through. And yes, for the feeding, that's in context with the feeding table. Yeah, and the fences, well, I've had 2 fences or areas that could be done with, that could be also managed with dogs. The others had 3 strands. These were also old fences, 35 hectares fence. Well, it was 20 years that they've been stood there, and they've been modernized bit by bit. Then we received the fund because we're inside wolf territory. And if you want this fund, then you have to do everything new. So I made application for me to be able to have a funding for the 35 hectares of fenced area. And your experience so far? Well, I'm very happy with the fences. They're very stable. The problem that I have is to keep the last areas. Well, there needs to be a flat area, but I have a steep area, and there's also landslides on it. And with the technique that we have seen so far, you have certain techniques, but they are you can't use them for the steep areas. Which is the one that you use here? This was an attempt with hot water. This went through machine ring. They have to keep weed out of the footpaths, and I used the same thing for the fences here. For 13 kilometers of fence, one treatment would cost 60,000 euros, and that is unaffordable. So I had to toy around and try to use different techniques. This one is with hot water. You also have helpers.
Wie kommen die mit den Hunden zurecht? Wie läuft
How
das?
do they manage with the dogs? How does it work for them? My experience has been good. If I was ill, I needed a helper, then it was a 1 hour introduction. I went with them to the stable, and they had to just feed the dogs one time and then in and out, and it was not at all a problem. If I have visitor groups as well, 60 people, for instance, if you go into the herd of cattle, then, you know, like they come there, greet the people, and then they sit down again, and it's not much of a problem.
Als du die Hunde gekauft hast, dort drauf
Well,
auch quasi
when
Wert
you
gelegt? Also
bought
hast du die auch
the
entsprechend
dog,
die Rasse oder den Schlag oder was auch immer oder den Züchter dementsprechend
did
ausgesucht,
you
dass der
choose
dir
the
Hunde
race
gibt,
or the
die,
breeder
sag jetzt mal,
by
gegenüber Menschen
him giving
eher
you
freundlich gesinnt sind?
dogs that would be more friendly to people? Yes, that was a priority for me. That's why we met with many, and why we choose the Pyrenean. It doesn't bite straight away, but it gives the wolf a respect. Whether they can kill the wolf, I don't know. But for us, it was one of the best dogs that one could have chosen. We have a lot of prevention here. We also have lots of tourists up here. So I certainly didn't want to afford a race of dogs that would possibly attack a human being. I wanted to absolutely minimize this risk.
Gab's schon mal Zwischenfälle?
Has there ever been an attack? Not biting, but there was one hiker, and she had a dog, and it went in onto the meadow with the cows and the dogs attacked it, and they bit that dog. But it was like the hiker's fault. She didn't have her dog on a leash.
Hund und professionelle Zäunung hast.
Well, now you have dogs and professional fences. How many times did you have any losses? Since we have the fences and the dogs, we haven't had any losses anymore at all. In the beginning, 2 dogs were injured, heavily injured.
Herdenschutz mit Hund viel zu spät anfangen.
And the reason for it, in my opinion, is that I started with the guard dogs too late. The wolf has territories, and the wolf recognized these pastures as its territory. All of a sudden, there were other wolves, so to speak, in his territory. So, you know, the dogs were attacked. So the dogs had to be taken to the vet, and the vet healed them again. But since then, we haven't had any wolves within the fence. There's one that walks along the fence, but the dogs are never too far away, and they actually bark like mad and make sure that the wolf doesn't come in. What I want to say is that since we have had the dogs, my flock of cattle has changed mood. It's completely calm again. If people go in, the calves and the cows stay on the ground, lying on the ground, and we can sometimes walk through the herds. And if somebody walks into the pasture and then the cows turn their head and check whether the dogs are there. If the dogs are there, everything's fine. Well, and the costs? Yes, they're quite a lot. 7 dogs we have per dog, €2,000 to €2,500. That's quite a lot. They get subsidies for that. Not officially. We've had a bit of a campaign, but well, we've had a little bit of fun, but not a lot. As far as the government is concerned, I haven't had any funds.
Was siehst du sozusagen jetzt Positives am Herdenschutz?
So what's positive about livestock protection and what is negative about livestock protection? Positive is that my cattle is very calm again. The dogs show a change. If the dogs bark, then I also know that a cow is calving. Perhaps you should also look at that. What is negative about it is the extreme maintenance costs for the fence and for the dogs, and actually keeping the fences clear, like of weed or some such thing. I don't know how to do it yet. We've used a worker this year. Then we need also a little bit of support from the wolf friends. But this is a job that I really don't know how to do that anymore, how to keep the fences clear. And if you cut it out, if you cut out the fences, last year we've had a lot of precipitation, and you had to do the cutting there 4 times a year. And just to cut the fences free is 20 to 30,000 euros. That is really not affordable anymore.
Dann könnte ich mir vorstellen, dass sich daraus auch klare Forderungen sozusagen an die Politik
ableiten lassen, that this can be translated into clear demands to the politicians, isn't it? Yes. And what are they? Well, they should help us financing, or they should at least send us people for tasks such as this clearing of the fences. I can't do it myself. The fence, if it has to be on our 365 days, then it's too expensive given my fence length. And I just have to switch off all the fences where no animals are inside and keep it only on for those that are there. Question from the chat. What about the application process? How did that work? The requesting process? I would say that advice giving and consulting by the authorities worked well. We received a lot of the support and consulting about the handling of the application. What the problem that I had is that we had to obtain an offer from the fence builders. And since I was one of the first ones who built such a fence, there wasn't any experience. And the fence company that brought the offer, well, they looked at the field on the screen, and 10 to 20 euros was the offer for a running meter when we were at the end for the first one. And however, we had to revise it, and all of a sudden it was 22 euros. Then I said, this is more than double. I can't finance that. I would have had to finance that because the offer that because I've handed in for my application for funding, I handed in the offer. But then Steffi Hofer, actually, I was lucky to have had her. I've had people who ultimately set up the fence voluntarily, and they helped us to build this fence. So that's what ultimately saved me as far as that's concerned.
Du hattest ja gesagt, es wurden
Yeah,
verschiedene
you said
Informationen an die
that
Bevölkerung gegeben und dadurch
a
war die
lot of different
Akzeptanz hoch.
information
Hat
was
sich
given
an
to
der
the
Akzeptanz
population, that
was
acceptance
verändert und
had
wie
been
hoch
high. Has
siehst du die
there been any
Lärmbelästigung
change,
durch,
and
durchs
what
Bellen?
do you think in how far is the barking a problem? Acceptance of barking noise. Well, I think hardly anything has changed. Of course, the dogs make a lot of noise.
Da war natürlich schon sehr viel los, also da haben die teilweise schon stundenlang
Some
gebellt.
nights in
Und wenn
particular,
dann schon mal von der Bevölkerung
they
angesprochen
bark
worden,
for
ja,
hours.
bei deinen
Then the
Hunden,
people
die haben
ask
diese Nacht
what
gebellt.
happened
Aber
with
ich habe
your
bis jetzt zum
dogs.
Glück
They were
oder habe ich
barking
noch
all
keine Anzeigen
night.
bekommen wegen
But
Lärmbelästigung
luckily,
oder
so
sonst
far, I
irgendwas in die
haven't
Richtung.
received any police